Gentlemen, our special guest for today, an old mate and a bloke who's done some extraordinary things. He started in radio and had extraordinary success there. Then he went to television, then he went to 10, then he went to 9, and then he went back to 10. And I think today he's making his first official appearance on the 7 Network. Please welcome Greg Evans. There you go. Beautiful. Well, what's the state of play, Greg? At the moment, no television and a lot of money, I'm told. Is that true?
No, that's not true. You always hear that, don't you? No, unfortunately, I wish I could say that was true. No, the show's Perfect Match is finished. We did our last record actually on Friday, Bert. Still recovering from the weekend. Still trying to get my voice back. And a lovely card signed by everybody, but no check in it, no.
A very emotional time, I would imagine.
Yeah, very sad, actually, Bert. 6 years the program's been on. I think that's... It's over 2,700 people we've put together. And from that point of view, it's lovely for all the contestants on the show, but we've had 11 marriages and 1 Perfect Match baby that we know of.
Right, that's terrific. It's very sad to see Perfect Match coming off because it has been a great success. It's been a milestone in Australian television. But about yourself personally, I mean, the obvious question to ask is, what went wrong at the 9 Network? You were there for, what, just under 2 years?
That's right.
And things didn't really gel. I'm told the money was good, they looked after you beautifully. What went wrong, Greg?
I think that basically, Bert, the 2 shows that I did failed, and I think that's what went wrong. If either of those 2 programs had been successful, things would have been very different as far as the future at 9 went. But I never ever knew what I was going to be doing at 9 when I went there. Very cleverly, Sam Chisholm told me that he couldn't inform me of what I was going to do until I worked for him. So I went there with the great unknown. Well, when I got there and asked him that, he suggested that we might take over the 5:30 time slot. I said, but hang on, that's against Perfect Match. I've spent 3 years building that time slot up, and now you want me to go against it. So it was very difficult to find a program to beat Perfect Match. We certainly couldn't do it. The program that 9 came up with didn't even make a dent on Perfect Match. So that, and in turn, meant failure for me. So I sat around for another 6 months, and they were trying to think of another program. That didn't work, so it was bye-bye, Greg.
We're talking about, what, Say Good Day. That was the first show. The second one was called what?
Crossfire. That was a quiz show. Originally, that was designed to fill in Facade of the Century, just as a summer replacement for that. That was somewhat more successful than the first one, but was only ever designed to have a short life.
Yeah.
So that put me in the too hard basket, I think, for 9. They didn't know what to do then.
Do you have regrets about going to 9 in the first place?
No, I think if I had it to do all over again, I think any man would have accepted the offer that they made. It was quite an experience to... As you would know, to be approached by the 9 Network. They come at a pretty fast speed. I mean, they come at you like a heat-seeking missile, and when they hit you, there's not much you can do. It was a very attractive offer. I think any man in his right mind would have taken it. I'm just sad, perhaps, that it didn't succeed as much as I would have liked it to.
I was reading a story on you just recently, one which I think you wrote yourself for the Melbourne Herald.
Yes, it could be that Rupert Murdoch's my new employer. That was quite.
Well, I thought it was a very interesting story, and I like the way you told the episode of how 9 approached you. You finished up. You went to lunch originally with a couple of 10 executives, didn't you?
Yeah, they'd be very disappointed, I think, if this was ever got out. But still, time has passed by enough now to tell it. My contract with Channel 10 was a 3-year deal, and it had 4 weeks to run, and nobody had bothered to approach me to renew that contract. So I was getting a little bit itchy, thinking, my goodness, are they going to ask me to stay or not? So that lunch was simply designed to talk about a renewal. They had to get back to the channel and do some work, and left me there with, I might add, the bill for the lunch. And in walked Sam Chisholm and some senior executives from the 9 Network and said, hey, they have re-signed you and everything's right. Well, no, they haven't. Come, let's talk. And I'll never forget that day. They left and he took me over to his table. And the rest is history. I mean, it just happened by just that much. I mean, if they'd re-signed or if Sam hadn't walked in, I don't know what would have happened. But it's amazing that that's how quickly your destiny, that took up the next 3 years of my life. It changed my whole life. Just that one Chinese restaurant. Must have been something I ate.
Right. Greg, I feel I can ask you this because I've never really hidden from anything that I've done in my television and radio career. everyone is so upfront and high profile, but I think it's best to admit to things when they're good and admit to things when they haven't been as good. I noticed at the Logies this year, which I compared, that there was a comment made by a comedian on stage about your night with the Logies. I know you reasonably well, and as you know, I've got the highest admiration for you, and I thought I detected in your face hurt just for a moment there, then all of a sudden cameras picked you up and you smiled. Number one, were you hurt? Number two, what went wrong with the Logies on that year?
Okay, yes, thanks, Bert. Well, the Logies that year, I think there was a couple of things perhaps that went wrong for me. I think perhaps I shouldn't have been asked to do that job. I hadn't spent enough time in the industry to have the experience to cope with that. But I was, and I was very, very honoured and very scared. I was just absolutely petrified walking down those millions of stairs that night. There were a lot of things that went wrong. The first one was the auto cue on that night. We were told at 4 o'clock that afternoon that the entire program was scripted. 4 o'clock on the afternoon of the telecast. I honestly thought that we would be an opportunity to interview the guests that day like we're talking now with no preparation at all. That wasn't so. And the auto cue happened to be a new electronic one which continually broke down that night. The auto cue, as the audience would understand, is the teleprompt in front of the camera lens. This was digital and it was brand new. Murray Tregonning was operating it, and whenever it would flicker and go off as you're reading something straight down the camera lens, it would revert back to its Japanese manual of how to repair it. So the next thing you've got Japanese coming up in front of the monitor, and you think, and this guest has worked on many and that was impossible to cope with. But the biggest thing, and the other thing was the opening monologue. That I'd never had anyone write an opening monologue for me before. The opening monologue was far too long, and I said, "Do you think this is funny?" Like, I mean, they showed it to me just before we went on the show. Yes. I said, "This about Dexter being a vacuum cleaner and all." I said, "I don't know that this is going to work." Trust us. We've been in the business 20 years.
God,
we
fell for that, did you?
Trust us. I fell for it. I went out there. The jokes died. I'm left there with an auto cue doing Japanese, and I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed in my life. I mean, ploughed on, and the program we completed it. But of course, I copped all the flack for that. Everything. Nobody blamed the writers for the jokes that didn't work. Nobody blamed the auto cue for that breakdown. I copped the flack for that, and justly I deserve it, I guess. I wish, Bert, I'd had another 10 years experience to be able to say I don't want to do the auto cue, and to be able to say to the writer, "I'm sorry, I don't think the jokes are funny, I'm not going to do them," as you would.
Would you take the Logies on again?
Absolutely, but with a totally different approach to it. I would not be subservient to those people with their 20 years of experience that promised me it'd work and then throw you to the lions and find it doesn't.
Were you hurt by the comment this year?
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever let you forget a thing like that. I tried very hard that night. As you said, you have to accept your failures, but I mean, they came thick and thin. There I was with 3 minutes of jokes that didn't work, and the next day they said there's a new album coming out called The Night of Laughs with Greg Evans at the Logies.
Oh, I think it's the way you approach something. I mean, to do 3 minutes of jokes that don't work. I've made a career out of that. It's good to see you, Greg.
Thanks,
Going to stay around a little while?
I'd love to.
So, Greg Evans, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks very much.
Good to see you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we'll take a break.